The Auburn Tigers are coming off of a very disappointing season in 2024. Is it now or never for Hugh Freeze? Do they have to get it done this year and have a successful season? Or perhaps his time will be done? Well, we're going to give you a very early projected record, see what those projections are as we preview this 2025 schedule for the Auburn Tigers. Auburn will have a very similar schedule in 25 to the one they had in 2024. Obviously, the home and away games are flipped in the SEC. And they don't have Cal this year, but they have Baylor, and they will play on the road in their non-conference game. So I think that does make this a little bit of a tougher schedule. Let's break it down. Here is that full schedule. And that game, that Baylor game, got moved to Friday night. This was just not long ago. They announced that game's going to be on Friday night. So that possibly makes that an even tougher game. I know it's kind of tough to go on the road on those Thursday, Friday night games, but it's week one, so maybe it's not really that big of a deal. But yeah, you look at the non-conference, they'll play Baylor on the road. They'll play Ball State, South Alabama, and Mercer. So not too tough of a non-conference schedule outside of Baylor. South Alabama, sometimes, they've had some decent teams, but Auburn shouldn't roll in those three games. Baylor is going to be the challenge for this team in the non-conference. You look at the home and away games. At home this year in the SEC, they'll have Georgia, Missouri, Kentucky, and Alabama. And then on the road, they'll play Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt. And when Auburn has had really good seasons in the past, it's been when they've had Georgia and Alabama at home, when they've been able to pull off those big wins. That helps. But let's say they do beat Georgia and they do beat Alabama, which would be huge. You've still got to go on the road and play Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and even a Vanderbilt team that is probably going to be tough for them. They just beat them last year. So this is a pretty tough schedule. It's not the worst in the SEC, and we'll show you how it stacks up here in just a second. But let's go week by week. Again, that Baylor game on Friday night, that's going to be a tough one. I think Baylor probably going to be a slight favorite in that game. Baylor is a team that a lot of people have as a preseason top 25 team on their way to early top 25. So, yeah, that one could be a very tough game. Then you've got Ball State the next week and then South Alabama. So, a couple of easier games in the non-conference. And then it's back-to-back road games to open up SEC play. Very, very tough games here. On the road at Oklahoma, on the road at Texas A&M. Of course, that Texas A&M game will be a revenge game after that overtime game last year. So that one will be really tough. Oklahoma, I think, is going to be a little bit better this year. And Oklahoma beat Auburn last year. This time it's on the road. So those are going to be two challenging games. You look at those first 5 games, they've got 3 road games that they could lose. And if they lose all 3 of them, they're 2-3. And here we go again. But if they can find a way to win 2 of those 3 road games, then I think the rest of the season, the rest of the schedule sets up in a way that makes Auburn a real threat, maybe even a playoff contender. But it all starts in those first 5 games. You got to at least go 4-1 in those first 5 games. They get a bye week after Texas A&M, and then it's back-to-back home games. So they get Georgia at home on October 11th, and then Missouri on October 18th. So tough games, but they're home, and they get Georgia after that bye week. That'll give them a chance, maybe. Georgia's not the same Georgia that they were a couple of years ago. They're still a great program, really, really good at the top of the conference, but they're just not quite that dominant team that we saw a couple of years ago. So maybe Auburn finds a way to pull off a win in that game. And if they can get to, win those 2 games and they're sitting there with just 1 loss, you look at the rest of the schedule, it's not that bad. Arkansas on the road October 25th. That'll be a tricky game. Then they've got Kentucky at home November 1st and Vanderbilt on the road November 8th. Those 3, from Missouri to Vanderbilt, we're talking about 4 games that really could go either way. 4 games that Auburn could win, but also 4 games that they can lose. So that's going to be a really important stretch for them to get, potentially all 4 of those games. If they are going to be, a potential playoff contender or something like that, they'll have to win all 4 of those games. Then they get that other bye week before Mercer. Not a great time for the bye week. You'd rather have it maybe before that Vanderbilt game or something. But, before Mercer, I guess it does give them a lot of time to prepare for Alabama because they get a bye week and then they get Mercer. So that's the positive there. But not ideal, not an ideal spot for that second bye week. Again, toughest part of the schedule is probably going to be Oklahoma and Texas A&M back-to-back. Outside of that, there are no real tough stretches. Of course, from Georgia to Vanderbilt with no bye weeks, 5 straight SEC games, that's going to be tough. But there are no brutal stretches on this schedule compared to some of the other teams in the SEC. So how do they compare? Well, if you look at their conference opponents, you look at their records from last year, Auburn's SEC opponents went 30-34 last season, so a 47% win percentage. That's, near the bottom. That's one of the easier schedules. Really, I guess it's more in the middle, close to 50%, but still on the easier side. So Auburn, again, I think it all starts with those first 5 games, 3 big road games. They've got to find some way to get to maybe 4-1 in those first 5 games, and then the rest of the schedule sets up to where, who knows, maybe Auburn could be in that playoff conversation in 2025. Real quick before we get to the projected record for Auburn, just want to let you guys know we do have an Auburn channel, and I'm going to actually be running with this channel. I'm going to be posting content over there very soon, so follow me over there, especially if you're an Auburn fan. Link is down in the description below. Again, we're going to start doing some content there for Auburn exclusive content, so make sure you, again, check it out and subscribe, especially if you're an Auburn fan. Auburn obviously underachieved in 2024, but what is the projection for 2025? What should their record be? Well, before we get to 25, let's look back at the projections from the last 4 seasons. You can see in 2021, they were projected to go 7-5. They went 6-6. In 2022, projected to go 6-6. They went 5-7. In 23, projected to go 7-5. They went 6-6. And last season, projected to go 7-5. They went 5-7. So this team has underachieved the last 4 seasons. They have done worse than the projections all 4 years. And do keep in mind, these are not my personal predictions. This is simply a projection based off of the formula that we use. And, it's usually pretty accurate. And these games, or these records, at least 21, 22, and 23, were all within 1 game. They just underperformed by 1 game. Last year was by 2 games. Again, a very disappointing season, a lot of close losses. Could have easily gone 7-5. Could have very easily matched these projections. But again, they have underachieved. And it's been 4 straight years now. This is a huge year for Auburn in 2025. Again, here is that schedule, and this is the scale that we use. So Auburn is a Tier 3 team. They were a Tier 4 team at the end of last year, but you look at all the pieces they've added. I did bump them up into Tier number 3, which is the same tier as like Oklahoma, for example. So the way this works, if they play another Tier 3 team, then that's going to be a 50-50 game. If they play a Tier 4 team, it's a 61 to 70% game. But if that game is on the road, then it becomes a 50-50 game. And that's the way our formula works. Again, no personal predictions here. There is no human element to this. This is simply based off of numbers and math and the formula that we created. So keep that in mind. We do have a few easy wins for them. Ball State, South Alabama, and Mercer. And these games will be counted as wins when we do the formula. So 3 wins for Auburn. These, should all be very easy wins. And then we go to games in the blue. You've got Kentucky. So Kentucky, a couple of tiers below Auburn, plus this game is at home. That's enough to put this one in the blue. Auburn did go on the road and beat Kentucky and Lexington last season. Again, that really doesn't have anything to do with this, but just something to point out. So you feel pretty good if you're an Auburn fan. Probably going to be double-digit favorites in this game unless Kentucky turns out to be a lot better than expected or Auburn turns out to be a lot worse than expected. But that's 4 games that, you're looking at this schedule and you say they should be able to get those 4 wins. But then the rest of the schedule, there's going to be a lot of tough ones in there. So we go now to games where I think they're going to be a clear underdog. We've got Texas A&M on the road and we've got Georgia at home. Both of those games will be very tough. Georgia's a Tier 1 team, Texas A&M a Tier 2 team. But again, Texas A&M is on the road. That's why this one is in the same spot as Georgia. Again, those will be tough ones. I would say Auburn more than likely going to lose both of those games, but I guess you never know. They'll have a shot, especially with Georgia being at home. But those are going to be the 2 toughest games, in my opinion, on the schedule. If they win the rest of their games, though, they're sitting there at 10-2. They're in the college football playoff. So the path is there. I mean, there are, again, a lot of tough games here, but not a lot of games where you'd say Auburn has no chance. I mean, they're going to have a chance in really every game that they play. These games here, yeah, they're going to be underdogs, but probably only by about a touchdown. So this schedule does give Auburn a chance. And then you look at 50-50 games. That's the rest of the schedule: Baylor, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and Alabama. So if you look at Baylor, Oklahoma, and Missouri, those are also Tier 3 teams. Those teams are in the same tier as Auburn, so obviously those are 50-50 games. And then you've got Arkansas and Vanderbilt in a tier below Auburn, but the fact that those games are on the road, that makes both of those games 50-50 games. And Alabama is in a tier above Auburn. They're a tier 2 team, but that game is at home for Auburn, so that's going to give Auburn a real shot in that one. So yeah, 50-50 games. If I just had to go through here and say, who's going to be favorites, maybe it's only a field goal spread, but I'd say Baylor's probably a slight favorite. I guess Oklahoma at home probably a slight favorite. I think Auburn probably favored against Missouri, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt, but not by much. And then Alabama, I think, will be favored in that game. So again, 3 out of the 6 games, 3 out of 6 50-50 games, Auburn's going to be favored in, but they're going to have to win most of those games, if not all of them, if they're going to have a chance to really make a run. Again, given the fact that they've got Texas A&M and Georgia on the schedule as well. So what's the projection for Auburn? Well, it's 7-5. So same projection as last year, which makes sense because it's a similar schedule. That would be a better season. I think Auburn fans would be somewhat happy with that. It's a step in the right direction. But still, again, I think with this schedule, you've got a real chance, real potential to do even better than that. So let me know what you guys think about Auburn and what do you think their projected record should be. Again, give me all that info down in the comments below. But just a quick reminder, memberships are now available if you'd like to help support the channel, if you'd like to get early access to videos like this and much more. Check it out. Link is down in the description below. Help us out. Become a member today.